Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you awake out there?
Yes.
Trying to be.
Happy Third Advent, joy. This morning I woke up and changed my plan for the message. I had a story that I was going to read from the internet that my father helped me to find, and it was joyful. And as I was awaking, I woke up with anxiety this morning because I'm tired and I need to do a little more self-care. And so I was praying extra long this morning. And all of a sudden, a true, real-life, personal story of joy came to my heart and my mind, and I'd like to share it with you. And again, it comes as a vignette from a hospital experience on the oncology unit where I round. And on this unit, I round with the cancer patients, but I like to sit and chart in antepartum, which is where the mothers who are expecting babies are taken care of. And oftentimes it's a very challenging place to sit because the nurses are often talking about stories of mothers and babies that are struggling to survive. That's why they're inpatient. And I like to offer support to the nurses and the mothers when needed. And there was a recent circumstance where a birth mother had a baby gestating in her that the baby was dying. And the mother didn't have any Christmas spirit because she was grieving. And the nurse, I don't really appreciate how much nurses go through, because they midwife, if you will, next to the patients, and they feel everything that the mothers feel and the patients feel. And the nurses were struggling with this one because they wanted to decorate the room for the mother whose baby was dying. And the hospital has an understandable policy that we can't have any flammable objects in the room, like tinsel and such. And that's what the nurses wanted to decorate the room with, but they looked up the policy and couldn't decorate the room. So they're squatting in their counter, and I'm charting and listening. Listening for an opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
And of course, as any compassionate human being would do, you listen and you offer, sympathy and empathy. And I just lifted it up, right? I said, Lord, how can we help here? Nothing came. So I went about my day. I skedaddled over to the cancer unit. And guess what happened? I entered a room. It was just part of what I do. I don't take any credit for this at all. I entered a room to offer care to a cancer patient. And she herself was an obstetrician, the patient, receiving chemotherapy. And she had a 6-year-old daughter who was sitting by her mother's bed because her mother's going through cancer treatments. And I hear this click, 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 click. And all of a sudden I look down toward the bottom of the bed, and those, how children make those chains made out of paper and staples?
Yeah.
She's making this long red and white string paper chain of Christmas colors, right? And she says, I'm doing it to cheer somebody up. I don't know who this is going to yet.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And she goes, Chaplain, do you know anybody that wants this? And I said, well, yes, I do. And so it was so long it would have covered through all these windows here, right? I mean, it was like all covering the whole side of the floor that I couldn't see past the patient's bed. Click, click, click. She's just doing this. And I said, guess what? I know a mama who's having a baby that's sick, and she's really down, and she needs some Christmas cheer. And she goes, and she breathes real heavy, and then she has to blow her nose, and she goes, oh my God, I knew it! The angel told me. The angel told me that I was going to give this to somebody who needed it. And so I took her hand, and I said, Mom, can I take her? And so she dragged this long thing. We had to go through 2 towers to get to the antepartum unit where the birth mother was. And the little girl really wanted to give it to the mom, but we can't because of health reasons, we couldn't let her go in. But it was perfect. And remember, the theme today is joy. And I'm telling you this for two reasons. One is that later the report was that the birth mother was so moved. She realized in that moment when a stranger, a 6-year-old, made her something that God told her to make for her, it helped her faith. But even more so, this little girl, we dragged this long Christmas chain by the 6-year-old all the way to the nurse's station. And I said, "Nurse," and she was the one that was really heartsick about the patient. We said, "We want you to give this to the mom." So the nurse got to give it to the mom, and the nurse bawled. All from a child. And so what is the nature of joy? Emanuel Swedenborg says joy is feeling the joy in another. That's the definition of joy. And so not only was the little girl overjoyed that what the angel told her was helping somebody, but the nurse was overjoyed that she was heard and she was able to give it and to help. And the mother was overjoyed because somehow she, from all this, understandably, she understood that God heard her prayer. Because how else would that have happened? And so all of this has come together in a way that reminds us again and again that joy is a very exquisite experience. It doesn't happen as often as happiness. Happiness is a very deep and important essential reality of life. But joy is exquisite because joy happens when there's an intersection of God with people. And oftentimes it's unbidden. We don't expect it. Not always. But we can create the circumstance. But joy itself is so exquisite, and it comes at a very high celestial level. And it's a given. It's just a gift. And this time of year, it's really important to remember that. There are so many different kinds of joy. So many different. The lowest level is when and this is, this is all a part of who we are. The lowest level of joy is when we're really only self-concerned. When we want our own way. Whoever wants their own way? I do. I want it my way, thank you. That's a kind of joy. There's a level of joy that when we get our own way, let's say it's for a good purpose or not, that's a kind of low level of joy. Or if we like to self-aggrandize ourselves. Ooh, isn't that? Aren't I lovely? Yeah. When we kind of beef up ourselves. And everybody says, "Ooh, you did that to me today in the candle lighting prayer time." You said, "Oh, Renee, your hair is glowing. And it looks so nice." And that's kind of a self-aggrandizing. It felt really good. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's a level of joy, but it's a lower level if you're looking at a hierarchy now. And then you go up, and there's a kind of joy that we experience from understanding knowledge. Joe said to me the other day, we were sitting and relaxing, getting ready for work, and he says, "Wow, it's been a year since Charlie passed." And Joe goes, "Yeah, the earth went around the sun one whole time." And that's what a year is. And it reminded me because of science, right? I said it was biology, but it's... But anyway, it's all the same. It's astrology. It's all the same.
Biology?
Yeah.
That's what I said. This is funny, I gotta tell you.
It was funny.
And she goes, "I know that. I took biology and I
had a blonde moment. But when he reminded me, my point is that he said, "Yeah, the earth goes around the sun one whole time. That's how long it's been since Charlie died." And I just kind of liked knowing that, right? I being reminded of that. And so there's a kind of joy, a level of joy of knowledge, of learning knowledge about different people and different religions and different sciences. And it's exciting. It's a kind of joy. And there's another kind of joy that Matt Chu knows. And we all know at an inner level too, which is the joy of obedience. When you do something because it's orderly, and you do it for the right reason. In the military, our soldiers know this. There is a joy in doing the thing right, doing things well and in order. There's an obedience. There's a joy in following what is right and good. That's a kind of joy. Then there's another level of joy, which is love for the truth that has an eye for good. And the best example of that would be, we feel joy, for example, we think of a doctor who feels joy in keeping up with the most recent medical knowledge, so that, not just because it's knowable, but because the doctor wants to help a patient. And I find that a lot at Beaumont, or any hospital would have this, doctors who have a patient that they're baffled by. How can this person receive care so they can survive? And a doctor learns their trade and their science so that they can try something new and get in that medical journal to help more people. So there's a level of joy, a love for knowledge so that we can help, so that we can love. And then the highest level is loving love for its own sake. So you love because it feels right and good to love. And this is really important. Another word for that in us is loving God. That's the highest. And that is a joy that we feel and experience that is indescribable. We can't really put it in words. Sometimes images can get us there. There's reality itself, then there's images, and then there are words. And feeling.
Yeah. Is there a relationship between altitude and attitude? Because we talk about uplift, right? And you feel
Yeah.
joy. So that's, just
Absolutely.
lifting people's spirits.
Absolutely. The doctors I run with every day say that attitude and effort are half of it, half of the healing challenge. And so we have all these different degrees and levels of love. Love for love of self, which is a necessary part of it. Love for knowledge, for its own sake. Love of obedience. Love for others. Love for truth so that we can love. And then loving for its own sake. And all of these things are a part of what joy is from. It's all the different types of love. That joy is the fulfillment of our loves. So when you experience joy, there's a love that's being fulfilled in us and through us. And so just imagine, this is a rhetorical question, I don't mean to have anybody ask anymore or say anymore, but just imagine our life without joy. Imagine what the world would be like if we didn't have these peak, inexpressible moments. And we know that God is there. We know there's something beyond time and space that's touching us, that's intersecting in our world. And that's today what we're remembering, we're giving thanks for. It fulfills us. We have these moments, like that 6-year-old who says, the angel told me to make this for somebody that needed it. And she had no idea. I was in the antepartum unit asking God to show me how I can help. That's a moment. That's joy. Because it wasn't just me and that girl. It was the nurse. It was the mother. And guess what, folks? Here's our closing thought. That baby felt that too. That baby that's crossing over early felt the joy that that angel meant for all of us. And guess what? It was meant for us.
Yeah.
It even rippled out to you and me.
Good.
Praise be to God on high in our hearts. Amen.
Amen.